So Rainbow's End, do you bet on horses?
Do I bet on horses?
Yeah.
No, not really. I'm not very familiar with the horse racing game industry, as it were.
Okay.
But I did enjoy this. Well, we'll get to that when we talk about it. But there's this interesting thing that we're going back and forth with Jack McGee, where either he is the world's greatest investigative journalist, or really the Inspector Clouseau of investigative journalism.
The Inspector Gadget.
Yes.
All right. So yeah, let's get to that. But yeah, I just wanted to find out if you were a horse race person or not. I usually lose money every time I go.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never actually bet on horses. I'm aware of the concept of horse racing, and always enjoy the big name races like the Kentucky Derby, and I know bits and pieces about it, but no, I don't actually go to the track. I
Okay. I,
I
I I'm
have
not
enough,
a I'm
I don't
not
have enough money to gamble on horses.
yeah, I'm not a person that's frequently going there, and I'm definitely
Yeah.
not a high roller by any means. Like I'm doing the
Mm-hmm.
minimum bet, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
always, I the limited money that I do put into it, I'm always asking, one of the guys that are in the suits, what his recommendation is, and it never seems to work out. So I don't know how those
Yes.
guys get their jobs, but I don't
Yeah.
know.
There's a great horse racing movie called Let It Ride with Richard Dreyfuss, and that was a system he worked out in how to win at the races. At one point, he just goes to all the people that are clearly going to bet on the losers, asks ask them what their horse they're going to bet on is, and just bets it, and it just eliminates all the horses till he gets to the one. Okay, none of these idiots are betting on this horse. That's the one that's going to win. So
Uh,
that's the trick, Phil or
yeah,
Dave.
yeah, I guess that's definitely what I would need to do in the future then. And I appreciate you calling me Phil. That was funny.
Sorry, yeah. Well,
You got your
I got my
podcasts.
podcast crossed. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's okay. Yeah. Well, we're just finishing off with Gotham. Not like tweeting Gotham, and there's Phil over there. So
Okay.
okay.
All right.
Mr. McGee, don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
You are about to listen to the totally super awesome 80s Reboot Overdrive podcast.
This podcast is our fan tribute to the Incredible Hulk TV show. Be advised that has been exposed to radiation, and we caution to listen at your own risk. You have now entered GammaCast.
So this is GammaCast, and we are talking Rainbow's End, which is episode 4 of season 2. Director is Kenneth Gilbert. Writers are Karen Harris, Jill Donner. Original air date October 13th, 1978. The alias he gives is David Bishop, which is actually one of my favorite names. If I ever had to go on the limb, I would go David Bishop. I don't know why, I just
Mhm.
always love that last name. Synopsis: while investigating the possibility of using a native Indian's medicine as a means for controlling his transformations into the creature, David becomes mixed up in a plot to kill a champion racehorse. On the show, I'm Dave, and I've got my co host Charlie. Hey, Charlie.
Hello.
So I went through all that synopsis, and I'm really curious. What do you think about this episode?
I really liked this episode. There was a lot going for it. I felt. I mean, I can. It's one of these things. Because I know what you like in this episode. I can see all the things that you would like, which is that we have Quest for the Cure. We have
Yes.
a nice bit of McGee in it.
Yes.
Although one could definitely say the Hulk is superfluous to the story. that he doesn't, that there's nothing in this story that you need a Hulk for. But
And I think I'm going to get a little bit more tolerant of that fact.
yeah,
A little bit of foreshadowing on our next episode, but let's stick to this one for the moment. And I agree with exactly what you're saying.
yeah, but I really liked, here's what I'll say, and this is, I don't want to get too far ahead, but this is one of these situations where we're going to look at it and we're going to say, we're close to what Banner wants. Why does he have to leave? You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's like, but because this is very, very interesting. One of the things I find, one of the things that I find so fascinating about this show and watching this show is seeing what popular attitudes were at this point in history about about the idea of race and culture, and what is, as an example. So of course we open up with this with just to give the audience some sense of what we're looking at here. We open up with a cover page story from the National Register on this medicine man's secret technique to calm down this horse named Rainbow's End, who is a horse that's dealing with aggression issues. Interestingly enough, so David gives a little science on it, where he's basically saying that it seems like the guy, the trainer, has synthesized diazepine through, I believe it was diazepine, through a mixture of various plants and herbs and spices, as you might say.
And his character name is Thomas Logan, by the way.
Thomas Logan. Thomas Logan was the trainer?
No, Thomas Logan was the Native American that developed the formula.
Oh yeah. He's the horse trainer. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. But so you see on the picture of and this gets referenced later, is that you see that it's like this very stock footage, old Indian in the full headdress, picture on the cover. And you actually hear when Logan is on the phone with Jack McGee later, he says, "Yes, I saw the picture," and you can hear in his voice the disappointment in the imagery that they're using. And he does make reference several times to the to the prejudices people are walking in with when they see him as a Native American. No, at the same time, he's also, using the ancient Indian secrets to, calm down the horse. And so that, it's one of these things where it's like they are trying to address the racial attitudes of the time, while at the same time almost not being aware of how other things they're doing kind of feed into that racist schism. I know we're going to get some ancient Eastern wisdom coming up soon. So, but it did strike me. It struck me as very interesting in this when the actor playing Logan seems to address this kind of racial attitude that he's dealing with, but then it gets walked back, and part of me kind of wonders if that was the actor feeding into this, saying this is how he would approach this, and the writers, but still having to work within the script, and that's why it wanders back to the tired old tropes, even as the actor is trying to push back against these ideas that are being written around him. I don't know. That's just, like I say, my headcanon on it, but I did find that fascinating.
So it sounded like you liked the episode overall, though.
Mm-hmm. Oh yes. Oh yeah. No. Overall, it was a really interesting episode. I mean, there are things that get done in this show for expediency, because it is a road show story. We don't, even though we do build on previous episodes, we don't have an ongoing arc the way that you would in a modern television show.
Right.
So there are things that we have to wrap up, and we have to get to our denouement right away. And of course, as I often comment when I'm tweeting about this show, it's amazing how often murder is just the first choice of dealing with problems for people.
I knew you were going to go there.
Yeah, well, it's just like, okay, I'm having and so let's just wander this back a bit. So what happened? So David Banner reading the National Register, and again, this is where I say, sometimes it really seems like Jack McGee may be the world's greatest investigative journalist, because this is again a situation like with Earthquakes Happen, where Jack McGee is already researching the story that David Banner is. In fact, David Banner is using the National Register as a source to sort of find his next possible cure. Now, is that because this is something that Jack McGee thinks this is the next kind of place that, based on everywhere the Hulk has been showing up, this might be a thing? This is a story that would catch the Hulk's eye? Or is Jack McGee just falling, bass backwards into the Hulk wherever he goes? And it's when you can see both stories possibly here, that Jack McGee is just that good, that he's one step ahead of the Hulk even before the Hulk knows what he's doing, or Jack McGee is just the luckiest guy in the world and the Hulk's just going to show up because that's what was written. In my mind, it's Jack McGee is always one step ahead. But then we'll see some other episodes we're going to be like, Jack McGee's not that good of a reporter, is he?
Yeah, we kind of hope that he's one step in front of him, but in this case, I gotta believe that he just had the assignment to write about the Native American that had created this secret formula to calm horses down.
Yes.
And he was just working on the story and just got lucky because, Thomas Logan, of course, when talked to him on the phone, couldn't give him more detailed stuff, I assume for a follow-up story, because he already had one printed. And so he's probably trying to get more details on it. He's not getting the information he needs over the phone, so he's going to be there in person. Yeah. So I think that, and he just got lucky that David Banner just happened to be there at the same time.
But again, we get this very interesting thing about the National Register here again, which is that it is a legitimate paper. And even though they're going to write a story without any research into the facts, this world is a world where all these facts exist. There is this secret formula that this guy has created that does have some strange and mystical effect that David Banner is going to seek out. And it is fascinating to me, this idea that, yes, that I was always a fan of the Weekly World News, and I don't think they much they much left the tri-state area where they were writing their stories, and when they would go take pictures of crazy things that they were going to put into it, but the Register really seems to be, like I say, a legitimate news source. Their stories may be of the strange and weird world that exists in the Hulkiverse, as it were, but at the same time, these stories are true. And I did find that quite I do find that quite fascinating when they touch on that. It's one of these things where I think sometimes, the writers don't always realize what they're implying in the story. There's the great bit from Men in Black where essentially the Agent K, or is it Agent J or Agent K? Agent J basically says, that's the greatest investigative journalism in the country when he's looking at the tabloids. And of course, Agent K just laughs it off. But of course, that's the point. It's there is this step there. Anyway, so
but in their universe, based on what it is that they're investigating, is that's their lifeblood. Is the weirdness, the alien abductions or whatever that get into those magazines that doesn't have a lot of collaboration. That's definitely what you would expect to see from the National Register.
exactly, and the point is that this is a world with Hulks. Hulks are real, and if Hulks are real, then what else out there is real? And the fact of the matter is, they're paying for Jack McGee to go to Hawaii, to go to, I don't know exactly where this is set. I don't think it's technically Kentucky, but it might have been. But to go around the country, to go around wherever, to chase down all these leads, to try and get the story. And as I've said, one thing we do find that's kind of interesting is that every so often Jack McGee does interact with other reporters, and you do see that the man is respected in print journalism, both in Terror in Times Square and again Hulk Breaks Las Vegas. We saw that people do respect Jack McGee as a journalist. So it is an interesting dichotomy that we kind of see playing out here.
All right, so I've let you go this far along, but now I've got to ask you a question.
Okay.
So you're a bad guy. You're attacking David Banner. And you get him enraged enough that he's going to turn into the Hulk. What happens to you next?
Well,
let's assume you hit David Banner, and all of a sudden he's behind a door.
Yeah, because
we don't turn into the Hulk in front of people. But
no.
So the Hulk, you turn into the Hulk. Hulk comes out. What does he do to you after you've attacked him?
Usually he throws you into a well-placed pile of hay or something.
Okay. All right. Now, that was my leading question, because this is what bugs me about this episode. Both uses of the Hulk were... Now, I'm not going to get into the whole, we didn't need a Hulk in this story kind of situation. I want to go, how the Hulk was used. So in this case, the first Hulk out, the barn is on fire. The one owner wasn't the owner of the
no, he was. He and this is an interesting is whether or not Logan's the trainer or this guy's the trainer.
Right.
But he seems to be part of the racing team.
Yeah. Regardless, he's the guy that's trying to kill the horse.
Yes. What it is he had invented something, and he kind of felt that the guy who
didn't pay him for it.
Fronted him the money for it was kind of cheating him out of the possible rewards, although no rewards had come yet. So, being a little bit premature.
Right. So the guy sets a fire in the barn that has the horse Rainbow's End in it, and then David goes in to try to save the horse. He frees one of the other horses, and he tries to save the horse. And then the fire starts to rage on a bit more, and then the horse starts to buck and get freaked out because of either, the fire or whatever. And it hits David to the point where he's on the ground, and then he's not getting the horse to safety, and then that causes him to Hulk out. And the initial reaction is to calm the horse and take him to safety. Whereas if it was a bad guy, the Hulk would, hurt the horse, or if you were a bear, you would toss it.
Yeah. Well, and this is something about the Hulk, is that the Hulk is not one thing. And we will see that again next episode, where the Hulk remembers what he was doing, what Banner was doing, and the Hulk moves to to complete whatever it is Banner wanted him to complete. And that is, and that is his nature. I mean, yeah, it might seem a little weird that that's what the Hulk did, but the Hulk knew what needed to be done was get this horse out of the barn.
I just figured that the rage that causes him to transform into the Hulk, the frustration of not being able to get done what needs to get done. The horse did something to anger or frustrate David.
Mm-hmm.
I just figured that the Hulk's initial reaction would be and I'm not looking for the horse to get hurt, trust me.
Yeah.
And it may sound like that's what I'm looking for, but I'm just thinking, Hulk rage. And the first thing I'm going to do as soon as I transform is I've got Hulk rage. I'm going to stop whatever it is that attacked me. In this case, it was a horse.
Yeah. And there's certainly a strong argument to be made there, and I'm not going to be the one to counter argue that the Hulk should have done it this way. But all that said, I think you can make the argument that the Hulk can be gentle, and we've seen the Hulk be gentle. We've seen the Hulk after the initial transformation, not just go and smash things. And we've seen the Hulk sort of be in a gentle state for a prolonged period at times,
right,
where he doesn't just immediately calm down and transform back.
Right.
No,
I understand that.
For what it's worth, the writers are a little inconsistent with their writing of the Hulk on this show,
Yeah.
And what it comes down to is the Hulk does what helps the story.
Right.
If it's going to help the story for the Hulk to do something that is more destructive, they're going to have him be more destructive. If it's more helpful to have the Hulk not be destructive, then they're not going to have the Hulk be destructive. What is, important for the story is what the Hulk needs to do. Now, and again, when we get to our second Hulk out, where it's just people pushing Banner around, again we have this situation where someone, I think, what is it, someone steps on his hand, and and he basically becomes the Hulk.
And they spill coffee on him too.
Yeah, he doesn't go attack the people who spilled coffee on him. He goes and completes the thing that Banner was trying to do.
And that's actually my biggest second issue with this episode. Is once again the use of the Hulk. Is you have him change into the Hulk. Very cool, by the way, that Jack McGee is right there in the stands. But besides that point, he doesn't choose to super leap to the top of the structure.
Yeah.
He decides to run up all the stairs. And to me, that was the second issue with it. I just think that he wants to complete the mission, and I assume he'd want to do it quickly. I'm going to take the stairs. Come on.
Yeah, well, there were a lot of budgetary questions here. I think maybe that with that maybe because he is indoors, so maybe he doesn't see the route to the roof that easily. That he sees the stairs, and that seems like the logical way.
I just think a simple super leap, and he's there. You know, and trust me, these are those 2 points that I just made are my only issues with this episode. I love everything else that you talked about. I love the fact that he has been trying to find a cure, and he's using the remedy created by Thomas Logan's character. Or Thomas Logan, to help that. And then you even got scenes in here from the season premiere of season 2 there that I thought were really cool to throw that in there. And then all of a sudden he doesn't change back. And we have this moment where we think, hey, maybe this is it. Maybe he's cured, even though we know as the watcher that that's not going to be the case. But it's still giving him that moment of hope, and I love that.
Yeah. But the thing is it did work. It was a cure. He just needed another dose. And rather than sticking around and working with this, it's like, well, I got to run. And granted, this whole idea, well, Jack McGee's right there. It's like, okay, yeah, Jack McGee's right there. But, the worst case scenario, he has to go off for a week and do something else, and then he can go back to this place where people know his secret and he can work on this, Um,
Either that or have the guy brew up a 6-pack to go.
well, yeah, not for nothing. Would that have been the worst thing? Unless the guy is like so secretive of his special process that he's not going to, he thinks this whole Hulk thing was all part of Jack McGee's plot to find out his secret. You know, I don't know. It just seems, when they end it in that way. And for what it's worth, it's not even like, and this is something we'll get to in the next episode too, which is like they kind of are ending these sometimes where it just seems like they just ran out of story. Like they're just wrapping it up. There's not really a strong impetus to make David leave, and it seems, especially seeing this, and then they do it again next episode, which is that you're just gonna have everyone talking around and saying, "Oh, Jack McGee's here. You better, you should stick around and talk to him." And it's like, no, I have to go. And it just seems like you could end that scene better, more stronger. Just having Jack McGee physically be around, having the near misses that we've seen, that we always love when we see them,
Right.
And I guess maybe they don't want to overuse it because then again you get into this, is Jack McGee the world's greatest investigative reporter, or is he the investigative reporter version of Inspector Clouseau? Is he just a guy who bumbles into the Hulk being here, or is he a guy who is actively thinking this through and even getting one step ahead of the Hulk at times?
Right.
For what it's worth, overall in this story, that there is a lot that and I think this is one of the things that you're going to get to a lot of times in this, where there's almost two different stories we're trying to tell. There's this interesting Hulk story, and then we have to build up a framing device. And I think sometimes the framing device, in this case, the disgruntled track worker who decides to sabotage this horse to get back at his boss. It's an odd story to just write in there, and I guess they felt they needed that. I think that, and again, this goes to, I think, what we expect out of a modern story, and what was the method of telling a story back then. In our modern story, things, are allowed to be more serialized. They're allowed to be more building, and you would come back to characters again and again. In this one, we're doing everything as a show where whatever characters we have on this week, only 3 characters are going to, from this episode, are going to be in the next episode, and that's what we're, and in doing that, they don't want to have anything that trails from the last episode to the next episode, because they don't want to have people getting upset about having to follow continuity. This is the pre-nerd era. Nowadays it's all about continuity. It's all about, oh, remember that thing from season 1? Well, now we're going to bring it back, and all the fans are go, ooh, look at that, they brought that back, and that thing that we thought was just a one-off thing was actually this whole big thing. At this point in history, that is not how people saw television, and that's not how people approached these concepts. And so we have to get everything wrapped up and get out of here so we can get to the next situation next week. And it hurts the show. Because you get things that aren't necessarily organic. Like David, once he finds, and like I said, let's be clear, he finds a cure. It is not. It is something that he's going to have to use ongoing. It's not going to be a one and done cure, but it is something that, when he entered into a Hulk-like moment, that, a trigger that has triggered the Hulk in the past, he doesn't turn. And not for nothing, I do get the feeling that these dream state Hulks are some of the more problematic for David. We've seen a couple times where we come into the series and into the episode after a Hulk out, and I do wonder how many of those are derived from nightmares.
Right.
That David Banner, doing whatever he's doing, just fell asleep, and then he wakes up and realizes that he turned into the Hulk last night because he had a nightmare about one of his wives dying.
Right.
Um,
And he alluded to that when he was talking to Thomas Logan, where
mhm,
Thomas Logan was trying to say that his people would almost worship a person like that had that kind of power. And he's
mhm,
like, well, no, I really don't have that power. The power has me. And
mhm,
he alluded to the fact that, it's like, I can't, even sleep sometimes.
mhm.
So, yeah, I see where you're going with that.
Yeah, and and so that was the but and that's the thing, is that he had something that actually worked, and rather than keep on working on it and exploring it, he it just, and and to that end, that's one of the reasons why I think sometimes when we do a searching for the cure episode, we kind of we hit a wall, because they're not going to let him progress, and they're not going to let him cure himself. And so it becomes the situation where nothing's ever going to work and nothing's ever going to be better. And it does create this redundancy in the shows. In the comic books, at least, when he was doing these cures, he would get progress. And most commonly what he would do is he'd get the Hulk to have some Banner-like intelligence, and then that would start to fall apart because the Hulkish nature was born out of rage. Um,
That would be an
but we never
interesting
get
twist
that.
on this one. If
Hmm.
if they were to have some way to show, or allow Lou Ferrigno to have those kind of acting moments with the
Yeah.
intelligence of David Banner, that would be really fun.
Well, it would be, but the people, the people who were creating this show, they did a good job, but they were not fans of the idea. It's sort of this kind of thing. You see, nowadays when people make a Marvel adaptation, you go and you get people that are fans of the material, and they create a show with reverence and acknowledgement of the source material. Even if they're going to do their own thing, they do recognize how important that source material is. In this case, the people that were tasked with creating this show were not fans of the source material. And so, they did, as I've said, they do anti-fan service, and they jettison as much of the show as they can, to their own detriment. I mean, they still managed to make a really good show, a really good Hulk that did influence how people think and see the Hulk for years to come. But at the same time, they also, didn't use the Hulk to his greatest potential. And I think, an episode like this where you do have so much that did work, that was great about it, in some ways kind of just highlights all the problems that the writing staff approached the series with, that made them say, no matter what, that made them say, we don't want to make a comic book TV show. We want to make our own. We want to make a drama, and for what it's worth, the people who are paying us to make this say we have to put a Hulk in it, so we're going to put a Hulk in it, but we're not going to do anything with the idea of a Hulk, because we don't really respect the idea of a Hulk.
I'd be curious to look that up to see. I mean, did they dislike the concept of the comic book Hulk, or were they just trying so hard not to make a comic book TV show?
Hmm.
I'd be curious about that.
Yeah, I can't speak to that specifically. I know that there was a lot of negative feeling about, and of course, comic book shows always had negative feelings. Um, the Spider-Man a TV show did not do well prior to this, and of course, shows like Wonder Woman and Batman all kind of became, they're beloved nowadays, but they were very negatively seen in their time, especially by the people who were producing them. And I do think that was, that's the world that these people found themselves in. It's, the people who first created comic books, guys like Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko and all these guys, they were not necessarily people who thought that this was going to be their career. Maybe less so for the artists, but even for them, it was like, this is something that we're going to do to pay the bills, but this isn't what I do. I'm not a comic book writer. I'm not a creator of superheroes. I'm a deeper artist, and I will one day do that, but right now I've got to do this to pay the bills. Whereas, nowadays people are approaching the art forms with that as their end goal. I want to be a comic book writer. I want to make superhero films because that's the genre that speaks to me, that I want to tell great stories in. I think that at the time, the people who were tasked with making the Hulk television show probably saw it as, well, this is our job and we're going to do the best we can, but we don't necessarily see this genre as being a genre that's primed for great depth.
Well, there's definitely some deep thoughts there.
Yeah, I mean, that's my take on it. But
and I guess to get us back in the episode and to wrap things up, for all the points that you made earlier as far as why I like the episode, you're spot on for every one of them. We had the fun moment with Jack McGee showing up, and the story that led David to going to seek out Thomas Logan, was because of the National Register. So I thought all that was really great. I like the idea that I'm going to use some sort of herbs and medicines to calm the rage so that I don't Hulk out. So I love all of that aspect of it. The points I made earlier about what, not necessarily why the Hulk was there, but how they use the Hulk was my problem with the episode. So outside of that, though, I think it's a really solid episode, and I enjoyed it.
I mean, like I said, it's not like I didn't enjoy the episode. I actually really enjoyed the episode. I enjoyed watching it. And I enjoyed just about every aspect of it. It's just I think that at times, there seems to be some, it's like there was nothing that was bad in the episode or the series. There was just something that, that when you compare it to something else, you see what they missed. You see where they could have done something better, something that was more interesting, that they just did not embrace. And that's sort of where I'm on it. But overall, I did like this episode. I liked a lot of aspects of this episode. I liked a lot of things that they touched on in this episode. But I do feel like they could have done a lot more too.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to take that as our final thoughts. Was there anything else in the episode that you wanted to cover before we wrap?
It was neat having the female character who wasn't directly a love interest for David Banner. That was kind of nice that they had a more platonic relationship. I also, I like, I thought, and again with things when she winds up riding the horse just as her father is going to go kill presumably the horse, but possibly the rider. I thought that was a pretty deep aspect of the thing that they didn't really touch upon. And not for nothing, there was kind of, and something we'll get into next week, where there doesn't seem to be a lot of punishment for criminals who are just misunderstood in this universe.
Yeah, and you made the point before. It just seems like the go-to reaction is that I'm just going to kill the problem.
Yeah.
And that's what was happening here. This, I believe it was Jimmy Kelly. His answer was, I'm going to kill the horse. As an answer to try to make it even for the money that he wasn't getting for this device that he helped create. So it's just interesting in this universe that that's the go-to solution. But you've made that point before on previous episodes.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. So, what are your social media credentials, Charlie?
Well, you can always tweet along with me on the Twitters at Charlie Esser. That's CharlieEsser. Look for the two E's in the middle for quality. And of course, you can write to me in that old-fashioned email way at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog. Someday I'll actually get back to writing that blog at gmail.com. Write to me about Marvel Comics, about the Incredible Hulk, or about anything that's on your mind. I'm always there to listen.
All right, and I'm Dave. I take care of the 80s Reboot accounts. So that's Twitter at 80s Reboot, Tumblr's 80sreboot.tumblr.com, Facebook.com/80s Reboot. We got a blog, so that's SouthgateMediaGroup.com/80s Reboot blog, and our email is 80sreboot@gmail.com. Now, in the past, the last two episodes, I did a quick shout out to other 80s podcasts that we have out there, but I want Charlie to spend a moment to tell us about what Super Connectivity is about.
Oh, what Super Connectivity is about?
Yeah.
Super Connectivity is my podcast with the great Phil Filmian Parrish, who is that was the nickname we came across last week, where we discuss everything in the Marvel Comics universe, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Marvel Television Universe, and dip our toes into the DC Cinematic and movie universe, mostly to just talk about how they do things wrong. But anything that's going on in it, and honestly, we will discuss everything from politics to philosophy to physics, all through the nerdtastic lens of the comic book aficionado. And then, of course, me and Phil also do the all-new Marvel Roundup once a week, where we get our books from Marvel Comics for the week and read them on, and we don't read them on there, but then we review them on air and discuss what the larger context of the Marvel Universe is in the comic book format.
So when I'm not following comic books as much as I used to, what's your favorite Marvel right now going on?
Oh, well, right now my favorite book is called The Ultimates. This is a book featuring the Black Panther, you may know from the recent movie, Captain Marvel, that's Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, Monica Rambeau, who is called Spectrum, who used to be Captain Marvel, as well as a character by the name of the Blue Marvel, who is a retcon 1950s superhero with basically a Superman pastiche, but he's African American. And who else is on that team? And of course, Ms. America, America Chavez, who is a pan-dimensional Latina superheroine. So it is pretty awesome. They are currently pushing the bounds of their universe. They've recently found out that they've recently put a note on the put a pin in the concept of sliding time, and said, "Yep, there is sliding time in this universe, and that's just the way that time functions in this universe. And it's quite a fascinating book, philosophically, cosmologically, and just superheroically. Big fan, and highly recommend anyone out there pick up The Ultimates. It is the best book out there that I'm reading.
All right, so listeners, definitely be checking out Marvel Roundup with Phil and Charlie, obviously talking about The Ultimates. So with that, we appreciate
and lots of other things.
Oh, definitely a lot of other things, it sounds like, but I just wanted you to be able to highlight something you were talking about. So with that, we appreciate everybody hulking out with us, and have a great night.
Good night.
We hope you've enjoyed this show. This podcast is part of the 80s Reboot Overdrive channel on Southgate Media Group. You can follow us on Facebook on the 80s Reboot group page. We're also on Twitter and Tumblr at 80s Reboot. We invite you to check out all the wonderful podcasts and blogs available at southgatemediagroup.com. And thank you for reliving the 80s.